Olive Vav. What do you want? Get out of here. Not you. I didn't mean you. I meant the
Hmm.
cats.
Yeah, I guessed as much.
Um, we do not divide a courtyard unless there are 4 cubits for each one, nor do we divide a field unless there are 9 cobs for each one. Rabbi Yehuda says, unless there are nine half cobs for each one, nor do we divide a garden unless there is half a cob for each one. Rabbi Akiva says, a quarter cob, nor do we divide a salon, or a hall, nor a dovecote, nor a cloak, nor a bathhouse, nor an olive press, unless there is enough for this one and enough for that one. This one's going to be second. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Anything. This is the rule. Anything which can be divided and still retains its name, we divide. But if not, we do not divide it. When? When they do not both consent. But when they both consent, they may divide with even less than this. However, they may not divide holy scriptures, even if they both consent. A man may not dig a pit near the pit of another, nor a ditch, nor a vault, nor a water channel, nor a launderer's pool, unless he distanced them 3 tefachim from the other's wall and plastered them with lime. One must distance olive refuge, manure, salt, lime, and stones 3 tefachim from the wall or of another, or plaster it with lime. One must distance seeds, a plow, and urine 3 handbreadths from the wall. One must distance a mill 3 tefachim as measured from the lower millstone, which is 4 as measured from the upper millstone, and an oven by the 3 tefachim as measured from the base, which is 4 as measured from the rim. A man may not place an oven in a house unless there is a height of 4 cubits above it. If he wished to place it in the upper story, there must be a layer of plaster 3 tefachim thick beneath it, and for a stove 1 tefach. If it caused damage, he must pay for the damage. Red Shimon says the stated all these measurements only so that if it caused damage, he should be exempt from paying.
Okay. Right, Gimel. So you got 2 neighbors. One in the upstairs in the attic has got a storehouse of wheat or whatever other produce, and the bottom one decides, you know what, I want to open a bakery over here, or a dyeing shop. Why? Because those things will create a lot of heat, and that will be possibly damaging to the wheat. Below refis bakar, and it certainly cannot open a cowshed underneath because of the smell. Be'emes b'yayin hitiru. So be'emes, when we see be'emes, that's like halacha psuka. That's absolutely nobody's going to argue with that. That's basically halacha l'moshe Sinai. Be'emes b'yayin hitiru aval lo refes bakar. So they said with wine, however, if the upstairs guy is just storing barrels of wine, then the bakery or the dyeing shop are okay, because the heat isn't bad for the wine. In fact, it actually improves it, according to those who wrote the Mishna. What do I know about winemaking? But they say that heat is good for a wine cellar, well, wine attic. But still not the cows. Cows are still a bad thing.
Interesting. Okay. Every wine storehouse that I've ever been in, when I go on these tours and everything, it's always cool.
Mm. That's exactly my experience. So I don't know. They did things differently. I mean, clearly they did things differently in the time of the Mishnah, because they came out with this concentrated wine that you couldn't even drink neat.
Right.
You had to add water to it before you could drink it.
Right.
Unless we just got more of a taste for alcohol than they did, and what we're drinking nowadays, that 13% alcohol is like, whoa, how do you drink that? So really, you should try some scotch sometime.
I think the most is about 15 or 16% on wine. The most 15.
Wines are usually about 11 to 13, I think.
Right. I have some that are 15 or 14, but 15 and a half. But I think that's about the limit. And I would think that the heat would spoil it. But what do I know?
Okay, this is what the Mishnah tells us. Okay. So if one of the partners opens up a shop in the joint courtyard, so they've got a nice big joint courtyard, but he puts up a table and starts selling stuff to the Bnei Rosh Hashanah. יכול למחוס בידו. The neighbor can come up to him and say, listen, I know I said originally, "Eini yachol lishan mikol hanichnasim v'mikol hayotzim." I can't sleep because of all of your customers coming in and out. And as a matter of fact, even if he originally agreed to when the guy was a good neighbor, he said, "Do you mind if I set up shop?" He said, "Yeah, okay, let's see how it goes." And he turns out he comes back and says, "I'm sorry, I thought I could deal with it, but I can't." You can force him to shut down the shop.
I always think of that when I think of the people at Best, when those trucks come at like 6:30 in the morning or something. We have a friend who lives right there. I don't know how they,
In the building next door.
right. I don't know how they do it.
That's a
make,
pain.
make me crazy.
That's a big pain, yeah. Ose kalim. If somebody is making kalim inside his yard, yotze or mocher v'soch hashuk, he must take his stuff out and sell it in the shuk. אבל אינו יכול למחוץ בידו ולומר לו, איני יכול לישן לא מכל הפטיש ולא מכל הריחיים ולא מכל התינוקos. Hold on, I'm getting the negatives confused over here. Oh, right. So the neighbor can tell him, you can't come in, you can't come. Right. The neighbor can say you can't have customers coming in and buying your kalim that you're busy making as a blacksmith or whatever, but he can't complain about the noise that he's making as a craftsman. Okay. Right, so he can't. So the neighbor can't prevent him from doing the work that he needs to do. So some explain that this is because he's got a chazaka that he's been working like this for a while, and the neighbor can't complain, or else it's just because this is just a normal thing to do in your courtyard, is to do whatever your malacha is. Opening a shop is beyond what the normal is. Again, these are all things that are considered, local custom. So if it's not the local custom to do stuff in your garden, like if you look at my setup or your setup or whatever, it's not typical for people to make a to have a blacksmith's forge sitting in your garden making these banging noises all day. That in our times, that probably is something that we would complain about. Say, look, if you want to make this stuff, then go rent yourself a shop in the Ezot Tasia and do it there, because that's not the way we do things over here. But one thing that the Mishnah does say is that he cannot protest about the kol hatinokos, about the noise of the children, if he wants to set up a school inside his house. And this is actually very, very nogaya, because especially in the early days of Beit Shemesh, when there weren't enough schools and there were too many children, people were setting up a Talmud Torah inside their apartment or whatever. So, like, I know my kids were were going to Ganim and Talmud Torah or whatever in all these different apartment buildings, and kids are noisy.
Yeah.
The neighbors do not have a right to complain. And this is not something that's dependent on minhag. This is because it's a mitzvah.
Wow.
It's a mitzvah to teach children Torah, and automatically children have got a right to set up a school that's teaching children Torah. And incidentally, that's I don't remember if there's an explicit Mishnah about this, but if there is, we'll probably see it soon. Right. But in terms of hasagas gvul, you're not allowed to set up shop in competition with somebody else who's doing the same thing. If there's not enough people to support both businesses, so you really like one of you is going to take a hit. But what you can do is you are allowed to set up as many schools as you like. So schools are not subject to hasagas gvul because we want there to be a good competition so that kids will learn well.
I used to, when I first came here, I remember there were like 3 or 4 pizza shops in the Mechaz, and I couldn't figure out why they were able to do that. With close proximity, there were
natural selection quickly took care of that.
3 or 4 bakeries and all. I just don't understand,
Yeah, Judaica shops. Have you seen how many Judaica shops we've got in this town? So you got 2 guys who've got who have walls, right? And it's undisputedly my wall and your wall, okay? They're, and they're next to and they're close to each other, okay? So they're walls that are kind of in parallel with a path in between them where people can walk through. I'm not allowed to put another wall there to that will block the path of the Bnei Rosh Hashanah. Not because it's a problem for the Bnei Rosh Hashanah, because it was kind of like a shortcut that they were using through the property, but because you've got to leave a gap of 4 amos so that people can still walk through it. Why? Because the people who are walking through press the ground down, which is good for the foundations. You make a good solid ground. Yeah, the more people walk, the harder the ground gets, and that's good for the wall. Okay, the chalonos. Kahaji's got an arichas about this question of the Arba Amos, about how much, whether you originally had the wall there, if it fell, and whatever. But Pashtas is that you can't come and prevent the Bnei Rosh Harabim from walking next to the wall because the owner of the wall wants that ground to be pressed down hard. Chalonos. Now, if let's say Reuven's got a window in his that's facing out, and Shimon has got it's facing out into Shimon's property, and Shimon wants to build a wall over there, along where the window is. So he's got to be careful how he builds this wall. One is he can't build it more than four. If he wants to build it higher than the window, he has to make sure that it's more than 4 amos higher, because we don't want somebody sitting on top of the wall to be able to look into the window. Okay, and similarly, if he wants to build, if let's say Shimon's property, Reuven's property has got the window quite high up, if he wants to build the wall lower than the window, then he's got to make sure it's more than 4 amos lower than the window, so that somebody standing on the wall can't look into the window. Again, Hezekiah.
Remember one time, many years ago, Rabbi Hayward talked about walking past the house and looking in someone's windows. Something that should not be done.
Absolutely, that's Hezekiah.
I remember.
So unfortunately, the town planners aren't as thoughtful about these things, about not having windows facing into each other. But honestly, look, if you're looking across the road, it's actually really quite far from each other. But I know that it's one of those things that I have to be conscious of, that especially at night, that I've got to keep my blinds down in my bedroom, because I do have a building more or less across the road, and if somebody happens to be peeking out their kitchen window across the road, then they can see right into my bedroom.
We have like an awning that comes all the way down, so it covers it. We get light, but it's able to cover the windows.
Yeah. Okay, we connect then, and also he cannot, if Reuven's window is right near the edge of the property, Shimon can't build his wall within 4 amos of the window, because that will block the light. So he's also got to distance it 4 amos from the window. Okay. Mishna hey, marchikin es hasulam min hashobach 4 amos. So if your neighbor has got a dovecote, and he wants and you've got a ladder leaning against a wall that's close to the dovecote, you've got to distance that also by 4 amos. Why? So the weasel can't climb up the ladder and jump into the dovecote and attack the doves. There's a quote. By the way, have you ever seen a weasel in Israel?
I wouldn't even know one if I saw one. I have no idea.
Yeah, they're very, very secretive. But I've never. Maybe they mean a mongoose. I've seen mongooses.
I haven't. I don't know what that is. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't see these things. I'm on the wrong roads, I guess. I'll see them coming. Yeah. I've seen jackals. Jackals, I've seen.
Yeah, I ran past a jackal last night.
Really?
It was dead. It was in the middle of the road on Kvish Esser. I was running in that divider in Kvish Esser, and somebody had obviously hit the jackal, and it had flown into the divider. So it was like I was running, and next thing, whoa, there's a jackal in front of me. At least I didn't have to extract it out the front of my car.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to do that one time? You have to do
I'll tell you about that another time.
right.
Okay, so the wall has to a maschila is which is a it's a pipe that goes from the roof. It's a drain pipe.
Drain pipe, right.
Okay, so that also has to be distanced 4 amas from the uh, um, he's got to when he builds a wall, he's got to keep it 4 amas away from the drain pipe. If you so that there'll be place for the person who's got the drain pipe to be able to put a ladder there in order if he wants to come up and clean up the leaves or whatever else. Okay. This is also doves tend to eat other people's seeds. So you have to make sure that if you're going to have a dove cote, you can't keep it in the city. You've got to be in somewhere outside of town by 50 amas. If he wants to make a dove cote in his own field, he's got to have 50 amas in all directions. So not that the dove can't fly more than 50 amas, but it's just that the doves are lazy like anything else, and they'll prefer to go for food that's close to home rather than further away. Which interestingly enough seems to be a bit of a kasha in the beginning, because the beginning said, how did you get your ladder right next to the dove cote? If your neighbor's supposed to be 50 amas away. The answer must be, of course, that he got consent from his neighbor. So, do you mind if I put my okay? He said, fine, but now he's got to keep his ladder away. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer base arba'as korin. Rabbi Yehuda is much stricter. He says you've got to give a space of 4 core, a place where you could sow 4 core of wheat around the dovecote. Malo Sheger Hayona, which is the average flight distance of a dove. Ve'im lekacho afilu beis rova harehu b'chezkaso. And if however there was a person purchased a dovecote, which was which the seller had a chazaka that he had placed his dovecote there, and then other people had come closer. So it wasn't his fault that everyone else decided to build closer to the shovach. And now he sells it, and the new guy comes in, and people say, "Hey, why is your dovecote so close to our property?" So that was how it was when I bought. The previous seller had a chazaka on it that it was allowed to be there, and so do I, which is true.
Right.
Good.
Okay.
Ad kan Mishnah chadashos. Let's see a test added.
Here we go. Test out. If one leased a field from another, and he did not wish to weed it, he says to him, "What concern is it of yours, since I am paying you its rental?" We do not listen to him, since you can say to him, "Tomorrow you will withdraw from it, and it will grow weeds for me." If one leased a field from another and did not produce, if there is enough in it to put up a heap, he is obligated to cultivate it. Rabbi Yehuda says, "What kind of measure is a heap? Rather, if there is as much as was sown." If one leased a field from another and locusts devoured it, or it was swept by storm, if it was a widespread calamity, he may deduct from its rent. If it is not a widespread calamity, he may not deduct from its rent. And Rabbi Yehuda says, if he leased it from him for money, in either case, he may not deduct from its rent. Baba Kama. Yud Vav. If one robs another or borrows from him or deposits something with him in a settled region, he may not return it to him in the wilderness on condition that he was going out.
Right, come on. If it was on condition
to not return it to him in the wilderness, on condition that he was going out to the wilderness, he may return it to him in the wilderness. If one says to another, "I robbed you, you lent me, or you deposited with me, but I do not know whether I returned it to you or whether I did not return it to you." It's returned, and it's returned, and I'm sorry, it's wrong. He's obligated to pay. But if he says to him, "I do not know whether I robbed you, whether you lent me, or whether you deposited with me," he's exempt from paying. If one steals a lamb from the flock and returns it, and it dies or is stolen, he is responsible for it. If the owners were aware neither of its theft or its return, and they counted the flock and it was complete, it is exempt.
Okay.
Okay.
Nazir.
Nazir. Okay. Let me just ask a quick question before we go. We're going back. We're gonna finish Baba Kama on Sunday. So where will we go? We're gonna start back at the beginning again, or
Sorry, when we finish Bava Kama,
right?
then we move on to Bava Matir.
Oh, so we'll be finished with Baba Kama. Okay, I just want to know if we were doing anything new. Okay, great. I just took my tissue out of the place where we're supposed to be in Nazir.
Okay, Nazir, we're in Ches Aleph.
Yes. Oh, my hand is right on it. Okay. That's the big one we had last. Because two Nazirim to whom an individual said, I saw that one of you became Tomei, but I don't know which one of you. They both shave and they bring jointly a sacrifice for Tuma and a sacrifice for Tahara. And one of the Nazirim says, if I am the one who is Tomei, the sacrifice for Tuma is mine and the sacrifice for Tahara is yours. But if I am the one who is Tahor, the sacrifice for Tahara is mine and the sacrifice for Tuma is yours. Then they count 30 days and bring jointly a sacrifice for Tahara. And he says, if I was the one who was Tameh, the sacrifice for Tuma was mine, and the sacrifice for Tahara was yours, and this is my sacrifice for Tahara. But if I was the one who was Tahor, the sacrifice for Tahara was mine, and the sacrifice for Tuma was yours, and this is your sacrifice for Tahara. If one of them died, Rabbi Shua says he should seek out someone from the street who will vow to be a Nazir parallel to him and say, if I was a Nazir, if I was Tameh, you are a Nazir at once. But if I was Tahir, you are a Nazir after 30 days. Then they count 30 days and bring jointly a sacrifice of Tuma and a sacrifice of Tahara. And he says, if I am the one who is Tameh, the sacrifice of Tuma is mine, and the sacrifice of Tahara is yours. But if I am the one who is Tahor, the sacrifice of Tahara is mine, and the sacrifice of Tuma is offered out of doubt. Then they count 30 days and bring jointly the sacrifice of Tahara. And he says, if I am the one who was Tameh, the sacrifice of Tuma was mine. The sacrifice of Tahara was yours, and this is my sacrifice for Tahara. But if I am the one who was Tahor, the sacrifice of Tahara was mine, and the sacrifice for Tuhuma was offered out of doubt, and this is your sacrifice for Tahara. Ben Zoma said to him, and who will listen to him to vow to be a Nazir parallel to him? Rather, he brings a bird as a sin offering and an animal as a burnt offering. And he says, if I was Tameh, the sin offering is part of my obligation, and the burnt offering is voluntary. But if I was Tahor, the burnt offering is my obligation, and the sin offering is out of doubt. And he then counts 30 days and brings a sacrifice of Tahara and says, if I was Tameh, the first burnt offering was voluntary, and this one is my obligation. But if I was Tahor, the first burnt offering was for my obligation, and this one is voluntary, and this is the rest of my offering. Rabbi Yehuda said, it results that this one brings his offerings piecemeal, but the Kakaman agreed with Ben Zoma. A Nazir who was in doubt whether he was Tameh and in doubt also whether he was a confirmed Matzorah, he may eat sacred foods after 60 days. And drink wine and contaminate himself with the tumor of the dead after 120 days, because shaving for the affliction of Taharis overrides shaving for Naziris when the former is certain, but when it is doubtful, it does not override. Non-Jews do not have Naziris. Women and slaves do not have Naziris. And there is an aspect of greater stringency applying to women than to slaves, for one can force a slave to violate his
Sorry,
Naziris.
no. Women and slaves do have Naziris.
I'm sorry. Non-Jews do not have Naziris. Women and slaves do have Naziris. There is an aspect of greater stringency applying to women than to slaves, for one can force a slave to violate his Naziris, but he cannot force his wife. There is an aspect of greater stringency applying to slaves than to women, for one can revoke his wife's vows, but he cannot revoke his slave's vows. If he revoked for his wife, he has revoked permanently. If he revoked for the slaves, he went free and completes his Naziris. If the slave passed from his master at a master's presence, Rameya says he may not drink, but Rabbi Yehuda says he may drink. A Nazir who shaved, that was it? That was it? Okay.
A couple of long ones in there.
Yeah. Shkolim, Dalit. Whoever required in the Sukkah would go to Yochanan, administrator over the tokens, give him money, and receive a token from him. Then he would come to Achia, administrator over the Nesachim, give him the token, and receive the Nesachim from him. In the evening, they would meet. Achia would take out the tokens and receive the corresponding amount of money. If they had anything left over, it belonged to the temple treasury. But if there was a shortage, Yochanan would pay the difference from his own funds. For the temple treasury has the upper hand. If someone lost his token, they would have him wait until the evening. If they found surplus funds for him corresponding to his token, they would give him his desachim, and if not, nothing was given to him, and they were inscribed with the date because of the deceptive ones. There were two collection chambers in the temple, one called the chamber of the discreet, the other was called the utensil chamber. What purpose did the chamber of the discreet serve? The God-fearing would deposit money into it quietly, and the poor ones of good families supported themselves from it discreetly. What purpose did the utensil chamber serve? Whoever placed a utensil to the temple would force it into this chamber, and once every 30 days, the treasurers would open the chamber. Any utensil for which they found a use toward the upkeep of the temple, they would leave. The remainder would be sold for the value, and the proceeds would go to the chamber, holding the funds for the upkeep of the temple.
Okay.
Okay.
Love him.
Okay. Hey, one who touches a zav, or whom the zav touches, or one who moves the zav, or whom the zav moves, contaminates food and beverages and immersible utensils through contact, but not through carrying. Maybe Yeshua stated a general rule. Any person who contaminates his clothing during the time of his contact with a source of contamination contaminates food and beverage to the degree that they will become beginning level and contaminate another person's hands to the degree that they will become sheni, but does not contaminate people or earthenware vessels. After his separation from the source,
it does not contaminate people what?
Earthenware utensils. I said vessels. I said
vessels. Sorry, yeah, okay, fine.
After his separation from the source,
I was looking in the wrong place. I beg your pardon. Okay, carry on.
Okay, after his separation from the source that rendered him tummy, he contaminated beverages to the degree that they will become beginning level, and food in another person's hands to the degree that they will become sheni, and does not contaminate clothing. Right? Furthermore, they stated another general rule: anything that is carried on top of a zav is tummy, whereas anything that the zav is carried upon is tahor, except for something that is suitable for use as a couch or seat, except for a person. How so? In a case where the finger of a zav is now under a row of bricks and the tahor person is on top of the row of bricks, the person contaminates two and invalidates one. When he separates, he contaminates one and invalidates one. If the tummy zav is on top of the row of bricks and the tahor person is underneath it, the person contaminates two and invalidates one. When he separates, he contaminates one and invalidates one. In a case where food, beverages, a couch, and a seat and ordinary utensils are on top of the row of bricks, they contaminate two and disqualify one. When they separate, they contaminate one and disqualify one. But in a case where a couch or a seat are underneath the row of bricks, they contaminate two and disqualify one. When they separate, they further contaminate two and disqualify one. If food, beverages, or ordinary vessels are underneath the row of bricks, they remain tahor. Because they said anything that is carried, that carries or is carried upon a contaminated couch is tahor, except for a person. Anyone who carries it or is carried upon an animal carcass is tahor, except for one who moves it. But Eliezer says, providing that he carries it, anything that carries or is carried upon a human corpse is tahor, except for that it forms a tool over the corpse, and except for a person who moves the corpse.
Okay. All right, let's see how much you've got to do on this one, because we have to go very soon.
Okay.
Tomorrow, base. Okay.
Base. If he gave birth to two males, one of them is offered as an ola, and the second one is sold as those who have an ola obligated, and its proceeds are kulin. If she gave birth to two females, one of them is offered as a shalom, and the second one is sold to those who have a shalom obligation, and its proceeds are kulin. If he gave birth to a tumtum or an androgen, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says no sanctity takes effect upon them. If one declares the fetus of a pregnant animal is an ola and she herself is a shlomim, his declaration stand. But if he declared the pregnant animal is a shlomim and a fetus is an ola, the fetus is the offspring of a shlomim. These are the words of Reb Meir. Reb Yossi says if he intended to say this from the onset, he is impossible to utter two designations simultaneously. His declaration stands. However, if after he declared the pregnant animal is hereby a shlomim, he then be considered and declared her fetus is an ola and the fetus is the offspring of a shlomim. If one declares the animal is hereby a tamura for an ola and the tamura for a shlomin, it is thereby a tamura for an ola. These are the words of Rebbeya. Rabbi Yossi said if he intended to say that this from the outset, since it is impossible to utter two designations simultaneously, his declaration stands. However, if he declared this is hereby a tamura for an ola, and then he can reconsider and declare a tamura for a shlomin, with the Tamura for an Ola.
Okay. I can.
I
Have a
can.
wonderful Shabbos. I'll see you on Sunday.
I'll see you